Everybody, y'all hear me, see me all right? Howling with the Wolf, off-season edition. Um, Man, I thought my off-season was going to start, getting ready for Senior Bowl, Super Bowl, um, everything that comes with it. But hey, you never know with this business. It turns around. If you hadn't seen the news, Titans um, parted ways, aka fired Mike Mularkey, and they're beginning a search for a new head coach. They won their first playoff game in 14 years. This move is a bit surprising, but if you follow the Titans throughout the season, you know that there has been some back and forth with this team, with what the Titans were basically looking for in this team, and particularly on the offensive side of the ball, and what they haven't got from Mike Mularkey in that element. So I can lay down some of the reasons. I can lay down what you guys think going forward. I can lay down pretty much anything you guys want. I wrote a few articles about this throughout the week. Definitely check those out. I wrote my first article, non-news. I wrote two news articles about what happened and what John Robinson said. But I also wrote two columns and two very different topics. One, I wrote about what caused Mike Mularkey to lose this job. And ultimately, it was his stubbornness, in my opinion, and his inability to scheme around Marcus Mariota. And the stubbornness refers to his inability or unwillingness to change and adjust both his staff and the offense. So those are the two big reasons that I think that he was out. I do think that he did a great job as far as building a culture with the Tennessee Titans, and that should be respected. I hope the fan base appreciates him for what he did. He was a very likable man in that locker room. He was good for us to work with, and I think that he would have deserved another year or two in my perspective if he would have been willing to make some changes. But he wasn't, and this is the situation there was. I wrote another article that came out today about what's next, and basically saying the pressure is on General Manager John Robinson to bring a Titan to the title to the Titans. Hometown guy, he'll be 42 in a couple days, and this is his biggest move as general manager so far. Basically, he's all in on winning championships, and this is what this move says. And where the Titans go going forward will be on John Robinson's shoulders, success or failure. So I think looking back 3 or 5 years from now, we will look at this moment where John Robinson fired Mike Mularkey, and it'll be clear whether it was something that took them to the next level as far as being a championship contender, or something that ruined the best progress this franchise had in 15 seasons. So a lot of pressure, but he seems like he's up for it. There's a lot of trust that he's built in the fan base, and rightfully so, based on the success he's had as GM. But it's time to see what happens with the new head coach. And he talked a little bit about what he wants in a head coach and what he's looking at, and we'll answer those with a few of your questions as we go down the line. So yeah, I will hop into some of the questions. If you guys are new to this format, I like to do this Howling with the Wolf chat once a week during the season, and I'll probably do it less frequently in the off season, but I'll still do it. And basically, we just talk. Hey, how you doing, Nicole? We just talk. I write articles, and I write certain things a certain way for a national basis. But here, I'm just talking to y'all. Whatever questions y'all want to know, we'll talk about it as best of my ability as I can talk, and just kind of give you the lowdown on what's happening with this Tennessee Titans ball club. So we'll get to the questions first. Let's see. I think this is just coming up. Clayton wanted to know, is Mariota still going to have surgery? Mike Mularkey, and I know he's not the head coach anymore, said that there wasn't any surgeries on the docket for Marcus Mariota. I know that story came out earlier this year. I'm not sure who reported it, but he said that he's fine. He doesn't believe that he'll have any surgery in the offseason, anything lingering. So that's good news for Marcus Mariota, because this will be the first offseason since it's rookie season where the focus will be on getting better, maximizing his ability rather than rehabbing. And I think that's going to be huge for Marcus Mariota, because one thing we need to be careful for is, I know a lot of blame got on Mike Mularkey and the staff for the scheme, and I think that some of it was appropriate, but some of it was Mariota and some of his bad habits coming off, bad footwork, and inability to feel the pressure inside when it comes. And honestly, he hasn't really fully developed as a pocket passer. So you hope a next coach can scheme around him, develop him properly. But we'll soon see who Marcus Mariota is and what he'll be going forward, because this is his third coach in 4 seasons. So it's about time to remove the young quarterback label for Marcus Mariota and expect him to be the franchise quarterback that this team believes he can be. So I know that all the Titans fan base loves Mariota. I think he has shown a great ability to make plays and win games. But it's on him going forward. Whoever the new head coach is, putting in or together a scheme, you got to figure out what this guy can do to lead us to championships. And that's the mentality here. Playoffs aren't good enough going forward. That's what John Robinson's message is. So let's see what more questions you guys happen. You'll know when it happens. If it does, yeah, I'll definitely I won't be keeping anything from you. If I hear on the new head coach is, I'll definitely give you guys news as soon as I can. I'm not sure exactly the timetable on when we'll hear. It could be as early as next week. It could be as late as a week after the Super Bowl. Depending on if they wait for the Patriots offensive coordinator or defensive coordinators to officially make a decision, some people on that staff. You got to figure out who you're going to fill out for assistants. If they're looking at some of the Philadelphia guys, they could have to wait till the Super Bowl. The issue becomes the Titans can't interview any candidates that are advancing to the Super Bowl until after the Super Bowl. I know Rappaport or somebody tweeted a tweet saying they could January 28th is the date, but a team source told me that it was basically that only happens if it's your second interview. So if the Titans hope to interview a Josh McDaniels or a John Delafippo or Frank Reich or Jim Schwartz, if those four or those two teams, Philly and New England, advance to the Super Bowl, that won't happen until after the Super Bowl. So that's something to keep in mind. As far as interviews already in the docket, Rams offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur is scheduled to interview with them this week, along with Mike Vrabel, the Texans defensive coordinator. Those are the two that are known. I know there's been talks about Steve Wilkes. I haven't confirmed that yet, so I'm not quite sure, but that's probably a likely possibility. He's a guy who's been on a lot of people's radar this season, and he's got a few interviews as well. So those are the three immediate candidates, or really two and probably a likely third immediate candidate that is known. And I'm sure that we'll see more candidates as well coming forward. Appreciate you. Thanks, Kate Clayton. That's what I'm here for. Give you guys the scoop and write stories that hopefully tell the stories of these players, these coaches, and these organizations, and why they make the decisions they do. So thank you guys as always for joining. I hope you guys are okay. If y'all in Nashville, it's snowing today. Hope y'all are warm somewhere inside, hopefully, but who knows. Let's see what we got here. Any player reactions on or off the record, Andrea is asking. Let's say this. I have talked to a few players off the record, and it hasn't been a terribly negative response as far as the firing. I do know that a few guys were questioning why it happened. There have been a lot of guys that have been supportive of Mike Mularkey, and they felt like he did a really good job building culture. I know there was a desire from some players on the offensive side of the ball to see more creativity, to see a scheme that utilized skills better, which ultimately was why the decision was made. But there were even more players that were loving the progress they were making. And I think that was particularly for guys who have been here through the bottom. If you were here through Ken Wisenhunt and 2-14 and 3-13, then Mike Mularkey at 9-7 and 9-7 and taking you to your first playoff wins in 2003, that's something you really enjoy. So I think that's something Titans' next head coach will have to overcome. They'll have to know that there's a very strong culture built here, and he's going to have to sell his program to a lot of these veteran players to know exactly what they're getting out of him going forward. So yeah, I won't completely reveal exactly who and what was said when I talked to players, but there was a lot of questions. Guys were asking me questions on, what will happen, who's coming up next, what type of coach is he looking for, those sort of things. And I think you look at where the Titans are and where they want to be, and they're pretty close. So you ask, why make a move at this time? And that's, I feel like, the big reaction for the Titans fan base was Titans players was not necessarily anger or happiness. It was just more of a questioning why it was happening, if that makes sense for you guys. Matthew is asking, who would be a dream hire? It just depends. It just depends on basically what you're looking for. I don't necessarily have a dream hire. I think we have to be careful with a lot of these hot offensive coordinator names because we don't truly know who they are. Josh McDaniels flamed out in Denver, and now he's the hottest candidate out. And I know a lot of people have talked about him changing his vibe and being better and learning his lesson. But we don't truly know that until he gets another head coach job. What if he's the same? What if one of things get hard, he's the same guy? So you never truly know, which is the factor of the unknown is what excites fan bases, but it also is scary as well because going in from Mike Munchak to Ken Wisenhunt, that was an unknown, but it ended up being a lot poorer than a lot of people thought it was. So I think that's an area where we're going to have to see. I know a lot of the names out there, guys who will fit well with Marcus Mariota would probably be guys that are top of my list. You've got to see what you have with your quarterback. This is year 4. You're going to have to pay him big money. You have to truly see if this is a guy that can be a top 10 quarterback in this league and lead you to a championship. It's time. It's year 4. You've got to find that out. So you got to figure out whether it's a defensive-minded head coach that brings in a really strong offensive coordinator and or quarterback coach, or an offensive-minded coach who you think matches up well and can get the best out of him like a Sean McVay did in L.A., or a Kyle Shanahan is doing with Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, or how Doug Peterson and that crew is doing in Philadelphia. That's ideally what you want. The problem is for every Sean McVay, for every Doug Peterson, for every Kyle Shanahan, even though it's early on Kyle's end, you get a Ken Wisenhunt. You get a Josh McDaniels, his first run in Denver. You get guys who aren't really ready or able to fully fulfill the job of head coach, because being an offensive coordinator is completely different from being head coach. So that's sort of my take on that. Chris, I'm worried that we will have a lot of veterans who want to leave because they all love malarkey. I mean, here's my thing about that, and I'll probably write about the culture element later this week. Guys know that it's their job. So there's a balance. Guys are probably going to be upset about malarkey leaving. They're going to want an explanation. You're going to have to talk to these guys and let them know why you fired their head coach. And the next head coach is going to have to come in and be straightforward with his program, try to connect with his players, and that's really important. And also find an element of this offense that has success early, because success really helps heal all wounds. So I know there were some guys that will be out because they're malarkey guys. But overall, I think everybody will realize the situation. And if the new coach can sell them well, I think they'll be fine. You know, guys like Brian Arakpo, guys like Jarrell Casey, guys like Delaney Walker, they're going to play. They're going to ball. They're ball players. So they're going to play behind whoever there is. Coach Flip looked like he would be good for Marcus. Yeah, I think he's definitely worth an interview. I know he's done wonders out there with Carson Wentz. And the question becomes, is he ready for a head coach job after only being a quarterback coach job? I'm not sure. It might be a guy you take a risk on. Same thing with Matt LaFleur in L.A. He spent time in Atlanta as the Falcons QB coach for 2 seasons, and now he's the non-play calling OC in the Rams job. It may be a little bit early for him, but if you're John Robinson and you think these are your guys, maybe you take a risk on them. Let's see what you guys got. Josh, do you agree that malarkey also lacked with game planning and game management? I think the game planning issue with malarkey was basically that their game plan was their game plan. They were, to an extent, stubborn in their way that they went about things. They were with the exotic smash mouth formula, which Mike was quick to point out. He didn't term it. It was a media term thing. But the way they ran the football, the way they wanted to run the football, run their bread and butter plays, run their 2 and 3 tight end sets, that was the way they were going to do things. And it didn't happen until late in the season that they implemented more no huddle. And a portion of that was to keep Marcus Mariota healthy, which was smart. But they had to find a best way to utilize the skill sets of Mariota and the players. And that doesn't mean running Mariota more, because as we saw over the last 3 seasons, he hasn't shown an ability to stay healthy for 16 games. So you've got to find the balance between protecting him and utilizing his skills the best way. And that's a balance. And I think Malarkey did a good job of protecting him for the most part, and he didn't do a great job game planning around him. As far as the game management portion, I think he had some struggles like all coaches, but for the grand scheme of things, they were 7-1 over the 2 years that he was full-time head coach at winning games 4 points or less. And I think that is a great sign of teams in the fourth quarter that finish games. So I think there were some mistakes, particularly in that Patriots game where he completely botched the clock management. I'm not sure why they ran the ball. There was a lot of questionable decisions, but we see that every week. Guys outthink themselves every week. The Steelers last week against the Jags, Mike Tomlin's won a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl winning head coach, and he was making some really questionable game management decisions. So I do think there were some mistakes in game management, but I think that's sort of an overall thing that happens when you're a head coach. So I don't think that had a big deal with him getting fired as much as things I mentioned earlier. Rennie repping them Cougs. Yeah, go Cougs. Got my UH hat. Got the Cougar emblem right here. That's my alma mater. Watch out for my boy Ed Oliver, defensive lineman. He's going to come out in the draft, not this upcoming year, but next year he's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. He's a monster. But anyway, let's run through these a little bit quicker, and then I'll give you an overall wrap, and we'll go ahead and move on. Vinay, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Correct me if I'm not. But I think if we can address getting a speed catching back via the draft or free agency, we could do a lot with the screen game like the Rams, which should help open up other parts of the scheme. MM8 is a rhythm quarterback, and these types of easy completions can help him going. Long question, Vinay. I've been there too. I ask long questions too. But basically, I agree. I think that there's a good chance we have seen a decent chance. I'll say a decent chance that we have seen the last of DeMarco Murray in Tennessee. And I think that answers somebody's question about DeMarco Murray. But I asked John Robinson the last question of the press conference, and of course he kind of gave me the answer he was going to give me, but I think it is telling in a sense. I asked him, what's DeMarco Murray, different people, DeMarco Murray's status for 2018, and he just said he's under contract. And I think that's going to be something that's an offseason story leading up to March. Is he going to be a guy that gets cut? His salary is a little over $6 million for next season. They'd have no dead money if they cut him. I think it's a very logical move if they cut him and go ahead and move forward with Derrick Henry as your lead back. But you're not sure what the new coach has to say. Maybe he loves DeMarco Murray. But I think the likely scenario is that you move on from DeMarco Murray, make Derrick Henry your lead back, and yes, add a back, be a draft or free agency, to be that receiving back. We've seen over the last 2 seasons of the NFL that receiving backs are king. So although Derrick Henry's a big back, can break tackles, great at what he does, you need a back that can really hurt defenders with their speed, with their ability to beat linebackers in the open field in the passing game. We saw Deion Lewis torch that Titans defense. Based on that, he's basically a receiver who plays running back. The Titans don't have a player who can do that. A guy like Tevin Coleman in Atlanta would fit fabulous here. Deion Lewis in the Patriots uniform would fit fabulous here. Those two guys would be really good in Tennessee, along with a few other guys. And there's a great running back class in this draft. I haven't gotten draft coverage yet because there was playoffs and coaching search. But sometime later this month, when everything slows down, or maybe even in February, I'll get into the draft stuff. And I think there are some options because I don't think Derrick Henry is your guy to be your three down back with the receiving element. I think he can be a 3-down back, but I think with the new age NFL, you need a guy who's more of a receiving back and who can block. So yes, and I agree that could help MMA Mariota in his rhythm and finding a safety valve and a go-to receiver. Andrea, you're a reporter out in Denver. Thoughts on Josh McDaniels? Josh McDaniels actually was gone before I got there, but I have talked to several people about Josh McDaniels. Here's what I'll say, because it's been a few years, and a lot of people have said he has changed. So if he's changed, good for him. I will tell you this. If he's the same guy that he was in Denver, you do not want him as your head coach. No way, no how. From what I heard, he really struggled with relating to players. He oftentimes treated them as X's and O's instead of people, and a lot of that may have had to do with him getting a lot of responsibility, having control over personnel and head coach in his first job. Um, but he has to do a complete turnaround as far as his personality and relating to guys if he hopes to be successful in his next gig. And that's really my take on him. I'm more wait and see on him than a lot of people because of what I've heard. Um, One former player of his once told me that there would be times where he would walk past them in the hallway and not speak to him based on a certain thing, or I don't know, man. People change. I've changed. I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago. So I don't doubt that he can be a really good head coach going forward. And that's sort of my take on it. If he became the Titans head coach for whatever reason, I know that it's been reported that he's most likely going to the Colts. But if he became the Titans head coach, I think you should give him a clean slate and wait for him to show you otherwise. But I do think that the past history does give a little bit of hesitation, in my opinion, as far as him being the blow away lead candidate. Let me see. Let's see. Fletcher, I'm worried about a good OC not being a leader of men in the locker room. Absolutely. And I've talked about that before. I wrote a story, my last story with the Denver Post, and you guys can read it. It's pinned to my Twitter profile. The Denver Post doesn't pay me anymore, but I was proud of that story, so it's still pinned on my profile. Basically, I wrote about particularly black offensive coaches and their struggle to get to the top, and how the cliche leader of men typically relates to the defensive side of the ball, particularly when it results to black coaches. But in general, it typically refers to leader of men on the defensive side of the ball and geniuses on the offensive side of the ball. So you can find a leader of men that coaches offense. That is very possible, and it happens. But there is a big risk, as you saw with Josh McDaniels, as you saw with I wasn't here from Ken Wisenhunt, but I think that was sort of some of the issue with Ken Wisenhunt. Just because you can scheme well doesn't mean you can be a good head coach. Those two things that aren't directly correlated. So yeah, that's my take on that. Josh, can we change our offensive scheme with the players we have now? I asked John Robinson about that on Monday, and he said that you can. These players can play in a variety of different schemes, and I think he's right. The issue is going to become on the offensive side of the ball is the lack of speed. There is a lack of speed on this offensive side of the ball. Taywan Taylor is probably your lone true speed guy. You've got several possession receivers and Corey Davis and Eric Decker, who's a free agent, and Rashard Matthews, who has 1 year left on his deal. Those guys are your core of your offense. Then you got Tajay Sharp and who will be coming back. But those guys, are more possession receivers, and you don't have really a speed back. Derrick Henry is speedy, but he takes time to get going. He's a long strider. So there's nobody who can really threaten the defense consistently over the top. There's nobody who's really going to be a guy who can win a ton of matchups because of his speed. So I think those are elements that will need to be added upon. I do think this, if you're trying to figure out a scheme for Mariota, the best evidence we have is that he would be good in something that he ran in college, but the problem is the NFL isn't college and teams catch up to that fast. So I do think that a mixture of some more three receiver sets, some more up tempo would be effective for him, but he's got to have receivers that can separate quickly and be in the right position at the right time. So that's sort of my take on the scheme. Chance, is DeMarco Murray on the roster next season? I'd say 30% chance he's on the roster next season. That's my gut feeling, based on what I'm thinking. Scott, would they even consider Vrabel? I definitely think they're considered Vrabel. I know they're interviewing him. I think that he's a guy who spent 8 years with Josh McDaniels in New England as a player. He sort of fills that leader of men cliche that I talked about before. And if he can fill out a good offensive staff to work with Marcus Mariota and sell them on how he wants to develop the quarterback, then, he could be a good fit here. But we'll see. Do you believe Steve Wilkes has a chance? If they bring him as a candidate, I think he will. Um, I think he will. I mean, I think he. From what I heard from people, I heard from two people around the league about Steve Wilkes, and they say that he's very smart, very strong personality as far as in the locker room, and he has a lot of trust in his players, and you know that's a big thing for me. Scheme, some of that stuff is what it is, and you got to find the right person for Marcus. But for a head coach, the most important things is do those players in the locker room believe in you? Can they win for you? And do you get the most out of your guys? And I hope the next head coach has that. So great pronunciation. Thank you. I had a lot of practice with Mariota. We always joke in the Mariota. We always joke in the press boxing games about how analysts don't get that correct. And I had a couple struggles with that when when I first got here, and sometimes I slip up. But pronunciation is important with names. So whose house? Cook's house. Thanks, Charlie. So is Josh McDaniels a lock for the Colts, and what's your take on him as a coach? I talked about him earlier. If not, if you missed that, just rewind this video or rewatch it, and you can catch my McDaniels take. But I don't know if he's a lock for the Colts. I mean, he can't sign anything yet until the Patriots are done, so technically he's not a lock. But the people who have reported him to the Colts, I respect as reporters, so I don't have any doubts that that's probably going to happen. So Titans probably should prepare for other candidates. Your wish list for free agency. I think for free agency, I wrote some stuff about this before, but the draft and free agency are both together for me. I think that a top-notch guard would be a priority. A guy like Andrew Norwell out of Carolina, if they let him go, that would be a guy that I think would be very intriguing to fill in on this line. At right guard, possibly fill in for Josh Klein, who's also a free agent, or maybe he moves to left guard and you move Quinn Spain to right guard. One of those two things. That would be a need for me. I think they could use a speed receiver. I think they could use a backup quarterback, whether that's draft or free agency. Pass rusher is maybe their biggest need, although I would prefer to see them get a guy in the draft in that department, a guy early that they can shape around and be their next great pass rusher. I think they need some cornerback depth, some depth in the safety position and in the linebacker position to help them cover running backs and tight ends a little better. So yeah, I definitely think there's some areas that need to add for sure going forward. Let's see. At Wolfe is Walker truly in the hot seat himself. Delanie Walker, the best player in the offense? He shouldn't be. He shouldn't be. I think he's good. I would keep the Titans' best offensive player. Maybe Taylor Lewan if you think it's that way, but and Marcus has been the most important. But we'll see. We'll see. Danny, you put out good material. Keep it coming. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Josh, hopefully he doesn't love DeMarco as much as Malarkey did. I was worried he was going to start with his torn knee. Yeah, okay. Do you want a better opportunity elsewhere? I mean, this team just won a playoff game. I don't think there's a ton of better opportunities out there for him. He's still the lead tight end here. Lewis, do you think we resign Avery Williamson, or do you expect Jayon Brown to be the future? That would be interesting to watch. I don't know. It's going to be interesting what Avery Williamson wants to be paid, to see whether or not they resign him. That's going to play a big role in it. I talked about DeMarco earlier. Let's see. Norwell is exactly the guy I've been talking about. He would be really good here. Do you think Titans go linebacker in the first round? Maybe outside linebacker would be more intriguing to me. But maybe they go inside linebacker. Wesley's getting a little up there in the years, and they may have to fill Avery Williamson's position. That could be a spot to upgrade, either in linebacker spot, but particularly on the edge. But yeah, I'm going to head and go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the chat. As always, rewind it back, and you can, watch whatever you missed. If I didn't answer your questions, my apologies. But yeah, we'll be writing stories throughout. I'll try to keep you guys posted on the coaching search. And yeah, see you guys.